So welcome back to Confessions of a Time Monk. We have the good fortune to be in England right now, and we were so graciously invited into the home of one of our favorite people, Jude Currivan, who you may have seen our last interview. And Jude has agreed to sit down and speak with us about an extraordinary new book that's about to come out. Her new book is called The Cosmic Hologram, Information
at the center of creation.
At the center of creation and in dash formation.
Very importantly, to show that this is patterned information. It's not just random data. This is information that is patterned, that is intentional, that is consciousness at play.
So Jude, you have, so when I speak about your book, the thing that I say to people is that this incredible person that we know has written a book that essentially unifies quantum theory with the theory of relativity.
I think that's just on the by. It also explains the true nature of the origin of species. But all of that is by the by, because its deepest aim, and I think what it does, is it unifies reality. It unifies the nature of reality itself. And it shows that information is reality. You know, the information that's the basis of all our technologies, the way we're speaking now and converting what we're saying into the bits of information that go down cables and through computers and over telephone wires, the information that flows through our virtual realities and our holograms is exactly the same digitized information that literally is the basic stuff of reality.
So if this is the basic stuff, so let's go back to what we would consider to be the beginning of time. So we speak about a Big Bang, but that's not how you're characterizing it.
Well, and I think most cosmologists actually, I mean, the Big Bang was a fairly derogatory name given by Fred Hoyle way back to what he didn't perceive was an appropriate way of explaining the nature of time and space, and it stuck because it's a great title. But it's very misinforming, because first of all, the Big Bang wasn't big. It was minute. The beginning of what we call space-time of our universe was minute. Secondly, it wasn't a bang, because we think of bangs as explosive all over the place. It was an actual and exquisite out-breath, very ordered, very, very fine-tuned, to the extent of one part in something like 10 to the 27 in terms of how forces fit together. So I call it the big breath, and that accords also with ancient spiritual understanding.
It's a beautiful image as well, the idea of this big breath. So a big breath that's being exhaled from where, by what?
Well, in this sense, what we're seeing, and this is now backed up by more and more cosmological evidence, is that our universe is finite in both space and time, in space-time. It had a beginning 13.8 billion years ago, which was the beginning of time as we understand it. It exists and evolves through other evidence as a completely unified and coherent entity. There is more and more evidence of its non-local coherence. So what we have is a finite universe, essentially within an infinite cosmic plenum. We could say a thought form, a finite thought form in the mind of the cosmos.
What again, a beautiful imagery around this. So you're looking, and I having read your book, I'm 3/4 of the way through the book. It's not in print. It's in print, but it's not released yet. So it will be released.
It's going to be released at the end of February in the US and in early April in the UK. But people can pre-order it now on Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
And what I would say to you, this is a very, very important work to pick up and to read. In my experience in looking at this book, Jude has been absolutely rigorous in citing the research that, in fact, supports many of the ancient wisdoms.
Absolutely.
So you've actually worked to create a bridge between the esoteric and science.
Indeed, and I couldn't have written this book till now, because although I've experienced my own walking between worlds and metaphysical experiences and understanding, it's literally only been in the last few years that the scientific evidence across many, many fields of research, this doesn't just look at the physics or the cosmology, it looks at biology, it looks at complex systems, it covers chemistry and meteorology and every scale from the most minute to the wholeness of our universe. And I cite something like 140 scientific papers with over 500 researchers across all those fields, pointing in the same direction, that information is reality, that mind is matter, and that consciousness isn't something we have, it's what we and the whole world are. And it's honestly, I feel it's a time whose ideas come.
And why? Why now? Why do you think so? So looking at this paradigm that you're giving to us, why now?
Because I feel that our dysfunctional behaviours have brought us to the edge of breakdown. And as a healer, as well as a cosmologist, I know that if you just try and deal with the symptoms of a dis-ease, then the symptoms will come up in other ways. And our behaviours, to me, are the symptoms of our collective dis-ease, of our fragmented perspectives.
So how dangerous do you think the materialistic worldview that's been propagated by science for the past however many hundred years, what do you think can shift as a result of bringing in a different perspective into what reality is?
Well, because science is so predominant, its disclosures, its views are held in great respect in the main. And yet it has had itself a very limited perspective on the nature of reality. The 20th century scientific revolution of quantum theory and relativity theory gave us great clues of the deeper nature of reality, but that almost philosophical perspective was put to one side, and the main thrust was more and more in terms of technological advances rather than deep understanding of the nature of reality. But just as at the end of the 19th century, when a lot of apparent anomalies were coming forward, that meant that there had to be a new look at the nature of reality, and hence quantum theory and relativity theory, a lot of anomalies and a lot of convergent evidence is now coming forward across all these fields that is showing that information is more fundamental than energy and matter, and more fundamental than space-time, that energy, matter and space-time are emergent phenomena from a deeper, if you like, non-physicalized realm that is often called the complex plane, but it's much more than that. It's actually showing that everything we call physical reality is innately informed and holographically manifest. So what we have is a convergence from many, many fields of scientific research, but also the understanding of what information's about, and especially digital information is about. So in a way, the technologies are now almost predisposing us to take this leap into the next revolution, which of course is far more than a scientific revolution, because it does reconcile with universal spiritual experience and literally unify reality.
So the interconnectivity that we're living in this technological age is creating the foundation on some level for
Almost
this moment?
almost the acceptance. The interconnectivity, but also deeper than that. You know, people are starting to experience virtual realities and find it very, very difficult to identify the difference between a virtual reality experience and a real.
Absolutely.
And what I say is that, you know, the virtual realities and the holograms of our technologies are like kids' toys, children's toys, for which reality is the masterclass. But it's the same digitized information. It's just the difference is that the scale of the pixelation, you know, like a high definition of our holograms, the best we have is 100 trillion times bigger than the Planck scale, which is the basic pixelation of reality.
So we're talking about a minutia that's almost difficult to even comprehend. So
We're talking about a scale of space-time pixelation, which is 10 to the minus 35 meters and 10 to the minus 44 seconds. That is the pixelation of space-time. That is how our universe thinks and how our universe essentially breathes, exists and evolves at that level of pixelation of the information with one digitized bit of information, exactly the same as plays through our technologies, but one digitized bit of information embodied on the holographic boundary of space-time at that scale.
So when I first saw the title holographic, I'm thinking about the holograms that I've seen that I can put my hand through.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, we speak about this as being an illusionary reality, but when I do this, I touch something that feels very solid. And then you explain about haptic
haptic holograms.
Haptic holograms, which was the first time I'm not necessarily versed in this technology, but the idea that there are now holograms that have a tactile aspect.
People are using ultrasonics allied to holographic, previously holographic methodologies to create something that, say, a hologram of an apple that actually you can touch and feels like an apple. I mean, it's just being developed.
That's extraordinary. So the idea that a hologram can be something that appears to be solid,
absolutely,
as a result of a vibrational frequency that's being introduced into the
It is, but the deeper thing is that when you say this is very physical, very solid, this is 99.99999999999% no thingness. When we drill down into the level of subatomic particles, we think, a lot of folks still think of subatomic particles as very small billiard balls. They're not. There's no solidity to them. They are excitations of vibration. So the understanding that what we call physical particles are very, very ephemeral and will-o'-the-wisp is converging with the understanding and the evidence now that information is as physical as anything we call matter. That understanding is converging to a realization, literally a realization, that information is reality. And so the laws of physics are beginning to be looked at being restated in informational terms.
So I'm interested if for example, this worldview of how reality exists became as accepted as gravity for most people. What are the implications of that in terms of how you think our day-to-day life might be changed?
I feel it can be transformational, and I think this is really so important, because what I'm basically saying is this isn't just a scientific revolution. This affects each and every one of us, because this transforms our perspective of who we are. What we're finding, for example, is that the same informational patterns that, for example, cities grow in terms of population density. Cities grow in exactly the same way as galaxies form. If you look at the scale...
I want to say also, in terms of Jude's book, she goes into detail explaining this in a way that's very accessible. And she not only explains it, she'll explain it in one chapter, and then she'll iterate it again, and then you'll bring it home a third time. So if you're intimidated by the idea that this book is too scientific for me, I would say to you, no, this is really a piece of work that can shift your worldview in a profound way if you'll take the time and the energy and be open to, the formulas for me were difficult. So I'm reading the formulas initially.
And give three.
They're
the three crucial ones.
It scared the hell out of me.
I did warn everybody. I said there are going to be 3 formulas in this book. Just 3. Very, very simple. Very simple. But absolutely.
And I admit, I don't have a science background. And yet you made this accessible for me on such a level that as I'm reading the book, everything that I read sent me down another rabbit hole where I needed to know more about this and more about this. So, really, you create a journey in this book that in itself is almost an initiatic path So
I thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And it was very much aimed to be as accessible as possible. You know, Einstein always said, the universe is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. This book is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. Because if it was any simpler, it wouldn't actually be that initiation from a dualistic worldview to a unified worldview, to a whole worldview. And, you know, for me, what it means is that, as I say, it's far more than a scientific revolution. It's a revolution in awareness of who we are. And going back to what I was saying earlier, you know, as a healer, my perspective is that we have a diseased, collectively diseased worldview. It's fragmented. And mainstream science has pretty much helped that fragmentation. We are at the edge of a cliff. And unless we unify our understanding of the nature of reality, and this book not just does that, but it shows that we are microcosmic co-creators of realities. It's empowering, and it's saying, and it's a wholeness, because what we can then do is appreciate our diversity, celebrate our uniqueness and diversity within the oneness. And I think that changes everything. If you finally not just understand, but begin to experience and embody this whole worldview, you behave differently. And all our structures arise from our dysfunctional behaviours, and our dysfunctional behaviours arise from our duality-based perspective, which is wrong, which is just plain incorrect. So by healing our worldview, we have the opportunity, I feel, to heal and transform our collective behaviours.
do you have a sense of how long that transformation could take?
There's something in complexity science which shows that when you have an underlying sort of what's called an attractor, for example, the weather, okay, the weather on Gaia has been sustained over a very, very long time from a particular attractor. It's called the Lorentz attractor. And it's dynamic, it's always moving, and yet it's always within certain boundaries, which means the weather changes, but, you know, we don't have temperatures of 300 degrees. We have temperatures that are within a sort of habitable zone around our planet. But when an attractor is knocked off kilter or moves beyond its sustainability, it can break down into chaos. Yet there's another option. If there is another attractor being potentialized in this supraphysical realm of possibility, then there can be a level of coherence, a higher level of coherence that can begin to create a possibility. And so instead of breaking down, the unsustainability actually leaps to this higher level of coherence.
So
now,
this is the non-linear leap in consciousness
Yes,
that
it's
we've seen at
non-linear.
different points in
and we have seen it in different points, but we've also seen it throughout the whole history of our planet, of our beloved planetary home Gaia. Because biological evolution, if you have a system, if you have a sort of fairly stable environment, first of all, organisms and their environment are not separate. They are co-creative evolutionary partners. So if you have a system which is fairly stable, like we've had for the last 12,000 years or so, there's actually been very little evolution. There's been, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, you know, birds getting longer beaks if they need to, or shorter beaks, or taller or short, but very little of new species, because the whole environment and the whole ecosystem of our planetary home has been fairly constant. But you then get longer cycles of ice ages, and what you have then is an adaptation process where species sort of gently die out and then, or adapt. But then you get what's called punctuated equilibrium, like an asteroid hitting 66 million years ago, and a near extinction event. And what the system then does is these new possibilities radically and quickly come forward. So with the demise of the dinosaurs, very quickly in evolutionary terms, there was the rise of the mammals. So what you get is this is all playing out in consciousness at different levels. And remember, on this unified understanding, everything is consciousness, then change can happen very quickly.
And so do you feel that we're at a stage where, on some level, consciousness is becoming conscious of itself?
In that sense, yes. I think there's a level of evolutionary self-awareness very much underway within our human collective. And my sense is, and it's a personal sense, we're at a tipping point, and it is breakdown or breakthrough to this high level of coherence.
So are we? So because many of my friends are activists, and they're very, very depressed about what they're seeing happening on a social, political, financial level. So they're feeling that the chaos point has been reached. But is that why? I mean, at this point, this emerges as that other plane that, as this is collapsing, this is an attractor that's pulling us into
the possibility of that new reality. And I would say, I mean, I would describe what's happening now as a healing crisis within our collective psyche. Okay. For a very long time, our worldview, our fragmented worldview duality, has caused us to play out a lot of fear-based behaviours. And although there's been a movement to inclusivity, those residual fear-based behaviours have pushed the other way.
Right, the backlash from that.
The backlash from that. And so for me, first of all, again as a healer, I know that if someone's in denial, if they've got a dis-ease and they're in denial, they can't undergo a healing journey. And we've been in denial, I think, about a lot of the aspects of our collective societies and psyche that have felt left behind, that have felt disenfranchised, that are fearful and angry.
And
all
so
of that.
So we're at an acute stage now where
I think it's a healing crisis. It has to be looked at. We have to look at it, and we need to look at it on a collective level. And so, staying in the duality of them and us doesn't heal anything. We're all the 100%. Yes. We are the 100%. So for me, it's about when I see what's playing out, what is it in me that I'm fearful of? You know, what is it in me that it's falling into that sense of separation and fragmentation? And how do I work on an inner level to heal that? And what do I do ostensibly out in the world? You know, how do I consider others? How do I consider our planetary home? How do I think and speak and act? And it's no good me thinking unity awareness and acting duality awareness. Right. It has to be aligned, otherwise we will still be playing out the duality in whatever area remains unhealed.
So we spoke earlier off camera about this idea of spiral dynamics and different worldview, different levels of consciousness representing different worldviews. So on some level, this is almost representative of a unity consciousness. So how do you speak to the people who are at a level on the spiral for which that's 3 levels above their worldview?
Even people on every level of the spiral understand love.
There we come.
Everybody understands love. Everybody, however poor, however disenfranchised, however economically disadvantaged or educationally disadvantaged, can look at a newborn child and feel love, can look at the eyes of a loved one and know love. Yeah? It's not about educational attainment or educational opportunity. It's the difference between fear and love. And for me, unity awareness is about love, and duality-based awareness is about fear, separation. So the more that we can understand that, it actually becomes very simple, is to realise that we are all one, and to begin to truly celebrate each other's difference and to help people feel safe. Because if people don't feel safe, they will be fearful. And if they're fearful, you know, it's like a spectrum. You know, on one end of the spectrum is fear, on the other end is love, and there's all the bits in the middle. So how can we raise and embrace love as a collective?
I think your book in some way is the hammock that we can suspend ourselves in, to be comforted in this worldview that supports that on every level.
That's its aim. To show the evidence, but so that you feel safe. It's
and
like,
the evidence, and really evidence. I mean, you have been so rigorous in your evidence of this.
Because it's like, you know, if you don't trust the hammock, you're not going to jump into it.
No, and
if you don't feel it can bear your weight,
you've woven a very, very secure hammock. So, I so appreciate you both writing this book and taking the time to speak to us about this book. Because it really, for me, as many of you know who are following the series, I live in a community that is an esoteric path. And to see a mainstream, I say that in quotation marks, physicist write a book that is so coherent with our spiritual school of thought, esoteric school of thought, is, for me, a huge step forward.
And thank you for that. And you know something, I feel it's because, you know, I might call myself a cosmologist and I have all, you know, the letters and the study and all the rest of it. But it's because I've led a life journey that has reconciled universal spiritual experience. So I've always, for me, I've been a lifelong seeker to follow the evidence of the nature of reality itself. So I've always experienced this physicalized reality as just one level of reality. And maybe it took someone with my weird and wonderful life journey of leading edge science and consciousness and universal wisdom teachings to weave this together, because I suspect it must be quite challenging for someone who is trained as a scientist but hasn't yet had the sort of experiences that we've had, to be able to be open to reconciling that and understanding that. And more people are doing that. And as you say, I hope this book offers the portal and the support and the nurturing and the accessibility to help a lot more folks on this journey, because it's a journey home to remembering.
Gosh, well, I hope that you'll pick this book up when you can and will engage in this journey with Jude. Because she really is a wonderful storyteller, and I think that if we can see this work enter the world in a really, really concrete, dense way, we're in a position to see change start to happen at an accelerated rate.
That is the aim.
Okay, so
thanks, Betsy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching us. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you didn't see Jude's initial interview, she in fact sits down with us and speaks about her interdimensional experiences from us as a small child, and that journey leading her into becoming a celebrated physicist at Oxford.
I don't think I was celebrated when I was at Oxford. I was a bit too young to be celebrated. I didn't win a university prize.
So exactly, you won the Oxford Prize in Physics.
I did, the Johnson Memorial Prize when I was undergraduate.
Was that your first year?
That was my second year.
Oh my
it was an
goodness,
essay on black
you waited
holes.
till your second year to win it. Oh.
I know.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Thanks, everyone.